So what do you do for the athletes that you work with in terms of getting the buy-in to nutrition, to see the value of it? Obviously, you've got some very clear principles and a philosophy around, nutrition, the approach, the importance. How do you get that buy-in? How do you share that value, and how would you try and convince organizations to see the value in nutrition?
I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they did say that if you look at teams like cycling, they do have 3 or 4 nutritionists amongst 20 athletes. They really do push their nutrition. So I think there's probably always learnings from other sports you can make and go, actually, you've adopted a different principle. What data can we get? And, how does it compare to others? Would be quite interesting to kind of do and see. I moved out of high performance sport in a way because it just get quite frustrating. You can see the things that you want to do, you can see the mistakes that are happening, and you're passionate about fixing it. I suppose what's nice if people come to you as an individual consultant is that when somebody is investing their money, they're already bought in. And that makes it so easy than being in a sport and having an athlete sit down and say, coach says I've got to speak to you, which can happen. So then you've just got to figure out which, gap to fill first with their nutrition.
So sorry, do you think coaches need to be educated more on nutrition as well to be able to communicate that value to the athletes directly rather than just referring them to you?
I think it's a huge topic and every coach is different. And nothing I say is to offend coaches because I know there's a lot of really good coaches out there, but...
Yeah, I'm a coach now, so don't offend me.
No, you can offend Yona. That's fine.
I think the lack of nutrition services and support brought into sport is problematic because everybody knows that nutrition is important, but they don't then invest in it. So then people want to give some kind of advice because everybody knows something about food because we've been eating since the day we were born. So you're already practicing nutrition, which is again another reason why I think it goes to the bottom of people's agendas because technically they're already doing it. You can't self-treat physio. The massage gun thing the foam roll only get you so far. Whereas you can eat your 3 meals a day and your snacks and you're doing nutrition. So what happens with coaches sometimes is they tend to maybe take it into their own hands, which if they're not fully drilled on nutrition, which they're not because they're a coach and not a nutritionist, can then sometimes lead to inaccurate information, misleading advice. I'm very aware of cultures where athletes can quiz each other on what they're eating and then demonize carbohydrates. And that's not the coach's fault. I'm not blaming anybody for that, but this is what can happen sometimes in sport. And I've also been in situations where coaches set weight targets for athletes, which I massively oppose anybody doing. It's not a coach's or anybody's place to do that without objective data and full analysis and full input from all the correct people on board, which is probably every other professional except the coach. And then they can set targets, but then not tell them how to meet that target. So the athletes then left to their own devices to try and figure out how to meet this target that coaches just decided is the way that they need to be able to make them perform best. And this stuff is genuinely happening out there. And again, it happened to another athlete I was talking to the other day. And I'm not saying that this is coming out of any negative from the coach. Their coach is thinking, how do I make you better? And then there's association of lighter is better. Not always the case. It might be in the short term, but it's not always the case longer term because it leads to reds, as we've already spoken to, if not done correctly. So if I'm honest, it's a very, very sensitive topic, and it's not to go out there and try and offend somebody, but if awareness doesn't get created around, actually, guys, this is a nutritionist job, this is where the professionals can come in, then it's always a case of there's this void that we know we need to fill, but we can do it ourselves. And it happens on social media as well. Everybody's an expert in social media with nutrition. And it's not a protected status, unfortunately. And it desperately, the landscape's changing now where people do have platforms, and it needs to change to be a protected status because it's getting dangerous. It's really getting dangerous because I'm the one who gets people coming to me that's got all this confusing relationship with food. They're scared of carbohydrates. They don't know what to eat. They tried to hit a weight target. It was difficult, traumatic. And then you've got to try and rebuild.
Is that actually where some of your more recent social media push is partly inspired by to try and get the more correct message out there?
I think so. I think there's a lot of frustration. I think when I first did go self-employed and looked on social media, the frustration really starts to build. And you can see it starts to build with other practitioners as well that have put themselves in there full time, where you're just kind of like, what on earth is going on here? How have we gotten to this point where there are people with no qualifications, who've been to the University of ChatGPT, giving out nutritional advice with 80,000 followers, and people going, thank you, this is really helpful. I'm like, you've no idea what's helpful because you're listening to them and it's wrong. And it petrifies me, absolutely petrifies me. And I do struggle with the balance on social media of professionalism and just completely losing my mind, to be honest with you, Freddie, because you do just want to sit there and just go, how have we got here? How have we gotten to this point where it's okay for people to have a platform and give out professional advice when nutrition is the foundation for everything we do in every single profession? There is not one profession out there that can't find nutrition will benefit them, whether you're sat at a desk and you're going to talk about the sort of amount of energy that you need, how to maintain good blood sugars, to maintain your concentration, if you're sedentary, and how you can manage all that aspects of it with might be cardiovascular, the really kind of more clinical health stuff. It could be dentistry and acids and food and rotting your teeth. It can be skin conditions and psoriasis and all the gut health. Every profession out there can link nutrition to either enhanced results or performance from their staff. So everyone can set up a social media account and go on ChatGPT and be like, well, actually, this is what I want you to do for nutrition. Don't have this, have this. This is bad for you. Take this instead. And there's a lot of demonizing that goes on there, and then people get confused and they don't know what they can and can't do. And I'm just at a loss how in nutrition there's a saying that says nutrition is either the biggest form of medicine or the greatest form of poison. And that is very much true. So if it is the greatest form of medicine, then why is everybody allowed to practice it? Because you would not go to a doctor who went to the University of ChatGPT. You wouldn't go to a dentist who went to the University of ChatGPT. You just would not put your health in those hands. But for some reason with nutrition, it seems to be the going theme.
That's so true. It's so, like you said, I guess it's that point of everyone, because everyone eats three meals a day or however much. And so, and I even, what you said earlier about, having some of the difficulties actually working with athletes, which again, I actually completely understand. But it was almost a little bit sad to hear in a way. But I understand that. And one thing that me and Yona have touched on, and I think where I was almost a bit spoiled being an athlete, because you just expected stuff to come. And so if something wasn't included in your package that was provided for you as a, on a program athlete, then it's true. You just wouldn't, why would I pay for that, like out my own pocket?
Yeah.
If they're not going to provide it to me, then, fine. Yeah. And I kind of had that attitude, which is really stupid. It's really stupid. But do you think, I guess my question is, the negative side of social media is what you're talking about, where there's a lot of misinformation. But the positive side is also, I also feel like it brings the awareness of certain problems to light more. Like information is more available. So do you think that problem is improving? Do you think athletes are more willing now versus 10 years ago to invest?
Ask questions, at least, yes.
Okay.
I think there is, but if you look at one of the first documentaries that really came out that rocked the boat on Netflix was What the Health, and it was a vegan documentary. And I had so many athletes walk from my door that was like, right, I'm vegan. I've watched this documentary, I am vegan. So then it's like this discussion of veganism and how to be vegan, the type of foods, the different types of proteins you need in your diet, the complete, the incomplete, how you manage it when you're abroad in countries that do not care about veganism. And a lot of athletes did fail because they didn't want to put the work in. And then they would lose muscle, and then some of them would just get injured, and it just didn't work out because, again, my capacity is always limited in how much I can support people within the sports. So is it positive because it brings people asking questions? There's an element of that we could say yes. But there's always going to be a flip side of, like you say, if they don't ask the questions and they take the misinformation for gospel, then they go and implement. It can go the other direction. So I think social media can be a really, really positive thing for this, but I just kind of feel like from a professional standpoint, in certain professions where we are going to impact people's health to the point that nutrition does, physiotherapy does, all those kind of things, I think there needs to be a better job of regulating it. Or there needs to be an opportunity for, I don't need a blue tick, but give me a green one that shows that I am professional, that you can click, that takes me to my body, my professional body, and goes, Louise Bloor is registered with the Sports and Exercise Nutrition Register. Therefore, you can see that the information she puts on there is legitimate. And that should be a badge, Elon, that I should not have to pay for, because I've paid for my university, I paid for my membership, I paid for my ongoing CPD. It should be free, and people can see that when they're putting out information, you've got a green badge. I click on that and I can see who you're affiliated with, and that you are a registered professional in that industry. And that is something that I feel needs to happen, because they can't regulate every post, but you can let people know who is a professional in what industry.
Yeah, because I mean, social media is where everyone goes to get information now. I get a lot of news. I get a lot of news from TikTok. Like, I don't watch football as much as I used to, but I get a lot of my football news from TikTok. And there's accounts that are spreading complete garbage, and then there's some that are actually truthful. But you never really know what to trust, and it's getting, as you say, it's getting really dangerous now. In terms of who you can actually believe and who not, and if you aren't really switched on to the possibility of being kind of misled, then that's when you're in a really dangerous situation, because you can very easily be taken by that. I'd love to switch it a bit back onto your career again. Obviously, you worked super hard in nutrition, did, again, a great job for the different sports that you worked with. What you were saying earlier about working in Leeds, London, Plymouth, and wherever else, Manchester, whilst living in Sheffield.
Birmingham. Manchester, Birmingham.
And Birmingham as well. Forgot about that. That's an outrageous amount of commitment on top of trying to be an athlete yourself. But you still managed to, as you said, make the long list for the Rio Olympics as an athlete and as a nutritionist. That's unbelievable. I remember seeing you in Rio at the dining hall, just outside the dining hall, and you were with Jess Ennis, and Brumton was like, "Oh, hey, Louise," and you were like, "Oh, this is Jess, by the way." I was like, "Obviously, this is Jess. I know who Jess is." That was hilarious.
It's rude not to introduce people, Yona.
It is so rude. It is so rude. I was like,
I love that.
I didn't even know what to say. I'm like, I obviously know who this is.
I didn't want there to be an awkward silence, people just looking at each other. I'm like, this is Jess. Yeah.
But you were on the team there. You were supporting that team. What was that experience like for you, especially kind of the journey that you went on, all the injuries, the perseverance to push through, and alongside all the work, retaining that level of excellence to be recognized as a high performing athlete enough to make it to the Olympics. What was that like for you?
It was, I always look at my career as a little bit mixed, because I made the Olympic Games. I didn't think like I ever would. I never thought I'd make the Olympic Games. And I think when I did, I probably got there by the skin of my teeth, because I was in incredible shape in the indoor season, and I won the 200 indoors title. And I was in the absolute shape of my life. And then, true to form, possibly low energy availability, who knows? I then got a little bit of a stress response to my back. Could be low energy availability, could be just sat in the car and doing hundreds of miles down the motorway.
That'll definitely.
And that would also, the doctor did actually say it's probably the travel, to be fair. Because my bloods were fine by that point. I've been on funding, and obviously we're trying to fuel myself. But so it really rocked me going into the Olympics, because I was in fantastic shape. got my eye on maybe an individual sport, really kind of pushing the dream. And then I didn't do well at the trials. I just couldn't regain that shape in time, but they did still take me for the relay, which I didn't run, which obviously is devastating, but I have got to look back at my career and stop being so harsh. I think for a long time, I referred myself as a failed athlete. Like, just, you train 6 days a week for 10, 15 years, then you get to the Olympics and you don't run. And that is the harsh reality of sport. Sport's cruel and it's brutal. And you've got such a time frame to make decisions. And if you make the wrong ones, it costs you your dreams. So I do have to look back and reflect at everything I've done, everything I've achieved, the hurdles I've overcome, and, be really proud of myself. And I do have to keep having those strong words with myself about it. Because the Olympics isn't always the easiest thing to talk about. Because people, oh, did you get a medal? No, but my team did. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. It really, really is. But I'm not the only athlete that's in that boat. I'm not the only athlete that's been and experienced that. There's a lot like it as well. And I do think we need to be, again, just kinder to ourselves and recognise that actually making the team is an incredible bloody achievement.
I mean, exactly that, 100%, because there's so few people in this world that can say they've been to an Olympics. So that, to take that off, regardless of whether you ran or not, you were recognised as one of the highest performing athletes at that time to be on that team. Yes, you didn't run, but actually the point that you made about, people saying, oh, did you get a medal? Like, the first question when I told my girlfriend Kira that I was speaking to you and that you were in Rio, but you didn't run, and the team got a medal. So she asked, like, did you also get a medal because you were named as part of the team, but you didn't actually run? And it's I don't know, it's an interesting one because, she said she's a netball player. She said that, if you're named as part of a netball team, for example, and you don't play a single minute, you'll get a medal at the end of it. But the way that, I guess, track and field and the Olympics maybe set up in that respect, like, if you don't actually run, even if you're only running the heats, you still get a medal, which I think is great. But yeah, I can understand how that's a tough thing for you to talk about. I'm glad you've reflected in the positive way on it.
Yeah, it's tough, and I'm glad you brought the team thing up, actually, because when you were talking about it, I was going to say I don't know if it's the same for teams, but with track and field, if you don't step foot on the track, you don't actually get the medal. I think what's really nice now about the relays is that they've gone back to putting everybody on the podium. So if 5 people run, everybody goes on the podium to collect their medal. Whereas before, there has been a phase where the extra legs who ran in the semi-finals and the heats, they would just, afterwards, someone would go, here's your medal. So
That's
now at least
crazy.
Yeah, at least now they're on the podium, actually getting that moment that they work for as well, which I think is really, really good to see.
Yeah, you know what? One of the things, I share a lot of feelings on that as well, Louise. Similar, I'm always very hard on myself. Always was. Obviously, a very, very good diver, but not exceptional in comparison to, some of the people that, I've obviously compared myself to. And one of the things that hurt me the most was, and it was probably an accident, but I really took this to heart, was I came 19th in the prelim and the top 18 make the semi-final. And I was in the semi-final for the entire event. And on my last dive, it wasn't a huge flop, but I did a dive for like 6.5 or something, 6.5 on a double out, which was, definitely below average, but not a huge drop. And then I missed the semi-final by a couple of points. So that was hard, but I'd stepped onto my first Olympics and done a solid performance, not exceptional, but solid enough, but just missed out. I was like, damn. But then I walked through like the media line, and it was probably just like a mistake, but like the team, the BBC and whoever, like they didn't even ask to speak to me, and like that really hurt. It really hurt me, and it could have been accidental, but the state of that I was in, it like, man, that took it out of me, and I even thought, and I know this is really kind of silly, but I also thought in a place that I could have excelled at, maybe compared to some other athletes, was an interview. I definitely could have given maybe an interesting take, some energy, a bit of personality. Like that was something I was actually good at, and my one opportunity that I had in the end, it just never even came, and like that really affected me. But anyway, enough about me, but it just seemed like a
No.
good sort of way to segue into that.
No, I think that's really, really valid, because I always spent all my life, whenever I did get on, just assuming that nobody would want to speak to me anyway. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
would
no,
have thought, just
yeah.
going, surely you don't want to talk to me.
I was the same. I probably
Yeah.
should have put myself there and been like, "Hey guys," but
Yeah.
again, it exactly
Yeah,
that's the reflection of how I was feeling inside.
Yeah, I was probably just sat next to you in the same little boat. To be honest, it was just like, I'm here. I'm just a spare part,
Yeah.
and that comes from, do you know what, Freddie? That also spans from this priority system that you get in sport as well, where you're not a priority in the sport. You're always kind of like, you're on the program, but you're at the bottom. You can have this, but not this, and it always kind of makes you a little afraid just to put yourself forward, because someone will go, "Oh no, sorry, that's not for you," and it does do that to you. I think. I don't know if that's.
Reinforced.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's my opinion of it anyway. I always felt like I was in the way of maybe living in a shadow.
Yeah, I mean that's my natural personality. So maybe there's
Yeah.
other things I have to analyze around that. But I think you're probably right. I think maybe there's an element of that also reinforcing that
Yeah.
negative behavior of not feeling like it's meant for you, and so
Yeah. Yeah, which is why I go out of my way in every consultation to know that everybody's my priority. Because I hate the priority system.
It's so true. But I think there's also the fact of high performance sport where there is the reality that not everyone does get that moment in the spotlight. Not everyone does get on the track. But again, you were still there. You were supporting that team. You were there with them. What was your role in that moment? Kind of once, I guess, maybe you knew you weren't gonna run. How did you kind of support that team? How did you still like maintain your high standards to help them get the best, or was that not the case?
So we'd have relay practices just scheduled in, because you'd have some athletes there as well that were also doing the individual, and they would want to really prioritize their individual events. So they had to, ahead of schedule, release when the relay practices were going to be. So we'd know relay practice on this day, so then you could plan your other training around it, whether it was just a sprint session or a weight session or a day off or whatever it was. You had the schedule. So my role was to obviously turn up to the relay practices and just make sure that the baton was getting around in whatever leg you were going to be potentially on. I mean, it was written quite early on, and we did feed that back. We're like, you make it so obvious who your strike four is before you even announce the team, because they just run you in the order. So if you're fifth or sixth, you ain't running. So it is kind of hard because you're down there running. Your dream is there, and that's out of reach. Unless somebody gets injured, which obviously does happen in reality of speed. People say it does happen, and you sit there going, no, it doesn't, but it does. People do get this close to the gun, and all of a sudden something happens. So you are always kind of there ready to fill in just in case anything does go wrong. But yeah, your job is just to do the relay practices and then turn up on the day. You warm up with them on the day, and then they go through to the first and final call.
Yeah, tough stuff. That.
Yeah. And then you watch the race, and then you just want to get on a bus and go home. But
Yeah.
you have to wait for them to come through and be like, congratulations.
Wow. Yeah, it is. It's so tricky, and I think a lot of people don't think about these things. But again, Yona, makes a good point, and unfortunately, it's kind of the reality of it, and I sort of understand that.
Yeah.
But I actually just from my last question, in this main section, I just wanted to ask, because you've been in this cool place now where you've been an athlete, you've been in the athletics world as an elite athlete, but then you've gone into obviously nutrition, and then you've worked in lots of different sports: diving, judo, football, athletics, right? I mean, what, in terms of excellence, from your perspective, what are the common threads that you've seen through all these different high performance environments? And then also, has there anything that's particularly stood out from a certain group of people that you worked with?
I mean, every performance environment you work into is different. They're all completely different. You have different levels of different coaches in there. You can have a different group of practitioners in there. Some will prioritize regular multidisciplinary meetings. Others, it doesn't happen. Some have really high standards on athletes and punctuality, and others it's quite relaxed. So they're all very, very different. To be honest, I think the best atmosphere you can have for athletes that creates excellence is an atmosphere that makes athletes feel as safe as they can possibly be and as happy as they can be. If you've got a happy athlete, you can achieve anything. If you've got an athlete that can talk about anything, that can ask questions, where there's no kind of fear or judgment from anyone, in a training group that supports each other, that has each other's backs, and you've got coaches that are very open-minded of the kind of systems around them, the practitioners that they work with that can come in, suggest things, they listen, they hear, they understand. They might not always have the capacity to implement, but you are valued as a practitioner and they are listening to your every word. That for me is a fantastic performance environment. It's one that creates practitioners that are heard, that are able to collaborate, and the athletes that are able to work with those practitioners, work together and just be happy, where hard work and, laughter just kind of meet in the middle. And that's for me when it comes together. You can have all the things on the outside. Obviously, yes, sleep's important. Yeah, I could say nutrition's important. Sleep quality is important. What you do recovering your downtime, that is all really, really important. I think that kind of goes without saying. But I think you can have all those things without it being like a strict kind of forced upon people and this really regimented culture. You can have it by creating a culture that's just open and where you've got happy athletes. And that's the magic for me, I think. That is the magic, just creating that happiness, that happy atmosphere, but still really pushing you still want to push the boundaries of everything you can do with science, with physiology. You still want to be at the front of the science and do all those kind of things, but just don't forget that at the end of the day, you just need to be happy. Completely
agree with all that. Being in a performance environment now myself as a coach rather than as an athlete, I'm completely on board with that. Just to finish off this main section, you gave us your elevator life story earlier. Could you give us a elevator pitch for the importance of nutrition? Like, what's your one line kind of sell on the importance of nutrition for anyone that doesn't value it at the required level?
You could have asked me that before. Could have written it down. I always get that it's like this overwhelm of nutrition because it's so big.
Yeah.
It is a lot. I mean, you can just sit there and go, I've written my philosophy down quite a few times. It's quite long. You could just simplify it and say food is mood. Like, food is I would say food is emotive. It's unbelievably emotive. So we use food to not just for health performance development, but we also use it to celebrate. It's a massive part of celebrating, whether it's a family event, whether it's a wedding, whether it's Christmas, whether you just want to sit down on a Friday night and just scoff some food and have some foods that you enjoy. And I think that's really important to remember, because a lot of people look at nutrition and they can also maybe fear nutritionists because they think we're going to list all the things they can't do.
Yeah.
And that is never the case when you get a qualified registered nutritionist. We're not there to take away. We're there to listen to your likes, your dislikes, and build a plan that works for you in your lifestyle, that enables you to be the healthiest you can be, the best you can be. And if you're training consistently, you will be the best version of you in your sport and in your performance. You can have all the talent in the world. If you're not training consistently, if you're constantly breaking down, you will not achieve what you want to achieve. And we see that time and time again on the stage, where the best doesn't perform and doesn't get the medal that they should get on talent and on paper because they've had a rocky road leading in. And I think that is a really big take home for me, is that nutrition will give you the consistency to be the best you can be, but it has to be fun. You have to enjoy it.
There's a motive.
Otherwise the psychology will also break down.
Yeah, it will break down. If you're overthinking things as well, like say with your nutrition, you start demonizing foods, kind of have that, it starts to break down. I will find room for your cakes. Do not fear.
What about custard tarts?
If I'm in for those as well.
Nice. Okay. Good.
I always have them, Freddie. I always have them. There's a very simple 80-20 rule that we operate on. And,
Nice.
there's the 80-20 rule, or there's the analogy of, there's over 1,000 meals a year that you will consume. Over 1,000 meals. That's 1,000 opportunities to get it right, or 1,000 opportunities to completely get it wrong. Get it right 800 times, the other 200 are fun.
Cool.
There's loads of different ways of looking at it.
Nice.
Very cool. Wow, Louise, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
This has been really cool because and we were looking forward to this because obviously typically we go into like our kind of main pillars more, but I think we've obviously talked a lot about nutrition, which was to be expected, but I'm really glad we have. It's like a slightly different style of episode and a different take on an episode. And I think there's a lot of really good messaging here that's going to be valuable to current athletes and also people outside of sport, maybe with certain expectations about what elite level nutrition might be as well. And so I think there's just some all around really good advice. So yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And if you open the doors for me to go off on a rant for nutrition, I will do it all day. So you did that, and that is what happened. So
yes, well, I mean, and also we're about to go into this bonus section, so maybe we'll open that door again. So people come and join us in the Patreon, the bonus section. But yeah, that is where we'll leave this main episode. So yeah, thanks so much for joining. Louise is going to stay around for one more dive, and so if you're not over there already, the link is in the show notes, and we'll see you in the next one.